Russia claims it stopped a wave of Ukrainian drones targeting Crimea. It says it destroyed more than 40 UAVs over the peninsula Friday morning. Now, this comes a day after Ukraine reported a brazen amphibious raid targeting Russian infrastructure there. Nick Payton-Walsh has more.
Well, Ukraine Defense Intelligence's suggestions that they launch a significant amphibious assault against Crimea is deeply important because of the symbolism that Crimea holds. I think it's fair to say, in the eyes of many Western officials, in the mind of Russian President Vladimir Putin, this is a very important part of their occupation of Ukraine because it was the first area they took in 2014, almost without a shot being fired, annexed through troops infiltrating. What Ukraine is suggesting is that a series of amphibious assaults hit the Crimean coastline and may have killed up to 30 Russian troops, essentially attacking their infrastructure and, more importantly, impacting their psychology, showing that even Crimea, which I think most Russians consider to be far enough away from the actual front lines of fighting, is now vulnerable to Ukrainian special forces assault. That's an important message for Ukraine to send because it has been criticised in Western media reports for focusing too much on Crimea. Ukraine's response, I think, would have been that so much of Russian military infrastructure is in that peninsula, and that helps Russia defend its positions in the front parts of the areas of Ukraine's southern counter-offensive. But this statement from Ukraine, essentially coming on Ukraine's Independence Day, a bid to project force, depth of how far they can hit Russian targets that may have thought they were secure otherwise, and also too feeding in to the broader discussion about how Yevgeny Prigozhin appears to have died in mysterious, if not deeply suspicious, circumstances. Remember, the death of Prigozhin is not by itself isolated from the war in Ukraine. It's another reminder for Ukrainians that Prigozhin led an armed rebellion against Putin, fought heavily in Ukraine for Russia and some of the more brutal front lines, but also too that Putin, if indeed he is somehow involved in this death, still feels a threat internally because of how Prigozhin negatively characterised how this war had been prosecuted. A lot's moving here on Ukraine's Independence Day, but battlefield change is certainly what Kiev want to project as the world asks exactly what happened to Yevgeny Prigozhin. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine.
And CNN's Nana Bashir joins me now live from London with more on all of this. So Nana, Putin breaking his silence on Prigozhin's death. What more reaction are we hearing?
Well, look, you heard there from Nick, there is still a lot of suspicion around the circumstances of Prigozhin's death. Russian authorities say a full investigation is underway, but it is very much in its early stages. We know that a full forensics examination is taking place. Teams will be sifting through the wreckage and debris spread across an expanse of about 2 kilometers northwest of Moscow. And of course, Russia's aviation authority has already released those details of the passengers on board Prigozhin and some of his top deputies presumed to have been killed in that crash. And as you said there, we heard from President Putin acknowledging this yesterday. He expressed his condolences to the families of the victims on board the plane, but he also spoke about his relationship, his long-standing relationship with Prigozhin. Take a listen.
I knew Prigozhin for a very long time, since the early 90s. He was a man of difficult fate, and he made serious mistakes in life. And he achieved the results needed both for himself and, when I asked him about it, for a common cause, as in this last month. He was a talented man, a talented businessman.
Now, Russian investigators will be looking at an array of possibilities, from possible malfunctions or technical difficulties on board that plane to questions around whether this was a deliberate incident, whether the plane was down. There is certainly much speculation around that, particularly, of course, in light of that insurrection we saw 2 months ago, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin. We heard from President Putin at the time. He was very clear and vocal that he viewed this incident as an act of treason. And there has been questions since that day around the possible retribution that Yevgeny Prigozhin may face as a result. But of course, no clear indications just yet around what caused the plane to crash on Wednesday. But of course, we have heard from the US, for its part, defense officials there saying that their initial initial assessments show or suggest that Yevgeny Prigozhin was indeed killed on the plane, but at this stage the Pentagon has no indications that it was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. Meanwhile, within Russia there has been some question, some speculation around the possibility of Ukraine being behind this incident, but President Zelensky has been clear on this. Ukraine had no part, according to the president. Kim?
All right, thanks so much, Nanda Bashir. Appreciate it.